She thought she could take a break, breathe in some freedom, and come back later, as if emotions could be paused and consequences postponed. One conversation, one glance, one "why not?" and everything began to spiral. Glittering dresses, unfamiliar hands, that spark in her eyes she hadn't seen at home in years. But while she danced under the lights of the nightclub, he was quietly assembling a case. No shouting, no accusations, just piecing together the puzzle. Photos, calls, receipts. He didn't leave. He stayed to watch, to wait. And when she returned from yet another visit to a friend, an envelope would be waiting. Inside wasn't revenge, but a verdict, penned by the hand of the man she thought too kind to strike. A mistake, because the quiet storm is always the most devastating. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watch this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. The rain pummeled Seattle that evening, drenching the pavement until it shimmered beneath the pulse of unsteady streetlights. In the warmth of their compact home, Evelyn Mercer stood silently at the window, her blurred reflection merging with the raindrops streaming down the pane. From the kitchen, the soft cadence of Nolan's footsteps echoed, reassuring, yet unable to quiet the knot of unease coiling inside her. Lately, she'd been wrapped in a subtle, unshakable dissatisfaction, a creeping sense that their once comforting routine had morphed into something stifling. What had once been safety now felt like a velvet cage. "Nolan?" Her voice barely rose above the downpour. A moment later, he appeared in the doorway, a mug of steaming coffee in hand, his eyes dark and focused on her. "Is something wrong?" he asked, voice steady but tinged with quiet worry. Evelyn hesitated, struggling to articulate the turbulence she'd been hiding. "I'm not sure. It's like we're in a holding pattern," she murmured. "It's not you, it's me. Something inside just feels off." A flicker crossed Nolan's expression, but he stayed composed, sipping from his mug as he leaned against the doorframe. His silence felt open-ended, like he was offering space rather than judgment. "I've been chatting a lot with Amber lately," she said, referring to her closest friend. "She's been living more freely, trying new things. It got me thinking, maybe we could try something different too." Though Nolan's expression remained unreadable, a subtle shift in his stance didn't go unnoticed. "Different how?" he asked, keeping his tone even. "I'm thinking, maybe we allow each other some room," she said carefully, her heart hammering in her chest. "Just for a while, to explore, see what else might be out there for us." His face didn't move, but the air between them suddenly felt charged. "You mean opening the marriage?" he asked, his voice emotionless. She nodded slowly, hope creeping into her voice. "I honestly believe it could help us reconnect in the long run. Don't you?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he set the coffee down and straightened, locking eyes with her. The intensity behind his gaze made her stomach twist. "If that's what you think you need," he said at last, quietly, "I won't stop you." A wave of relief surged, only to be quickly doused by his next words. "But understand this, Evelyn. Whatever direction we take, we're either walking it together or not at all." That night, sleep eluded her. Evelyn lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying his calm, precise words. No shouting, no accusations, no pleading. He hadn't objected. Yet something in his voice lingered like a cut left to bleed beneath the surface. By morning, he was gone. On the kitchen counter sat a single note in his neat handwriting. "Working late. Don't wait up." The message was brief, polite, and strangely impersonal. All day she tried to convince herself that he was truly on board, that maybe he wanted this as much as she did. She wasn't walking away from him. She loved him still, but she needed something she couldn't yet define: air, novelty, freedom. That evening, Amber showed up in a black dress that sparkled with mischief. "Ready to turn some heads?" she asked, eyes gleaming. Evelyn hesitated. "I don't know. It feels so soon. We just talked about this yesterday." Amber smirked. If he didn't object, he's probably already setting something up himself. "Men don't waste time. You shouldn't either. Tonight is yours." Reluctantly, Evelyn gave in. She reached for the crimson dress tucked in the back of her closet, the one she hadn't worn in years, and followed Amber into Seattle's electric nightlife. As they stepped into the Velvet Room, one of the city's elite lounges, the pulse of music and light sent a current through her. The place was alive. Rhythms vibrated through the walls, crystal glasses chimed, and laughter erupted like fireworks. At the bar, Evelyn ordered a cocktail and let her gaze wander. That's when she saw him. Tall, self-assured, dressed in a fitted suit, exuding quiet power. Nicholas Hawthorne. A colleague she barely knew, just polite nods at work. But tonight, he radiated charisma. "Evelyn?" he said, smiling with surprise as she approached. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Same," she replied, conscious of the heat in her cheeks. Nicholas possessed a charm that drew her in. Their conversation flowed easily, full of laughter and flirtation. Amber had already disappeared into the crowd, leaving Evelyn to lose herself in the moment. She hadn't anticipated the pull, the spark. When Nicholas leaned in and softly asked if she wanted to leave with him, her answer came in a whisper and a nod. Back at their house, Nolan sat alone at his desk, the glow of his laptop casting sharp shadows across his face. But he wasn't reviewing project documents as Evelyn assumed. He was assembling something far more intimate. Tabs of spreadsheets, folders of screenshots, logs of calls and charges, each item painstakingly catalogued. He had known for some time. The flicker in her eyes, the emotional drift, her proposal hadn't shocked him. It had simply verified what he'd already suspected. Nolan didn't lash out. He strategized. He observed. He waited. And now, as another file of photos arrived from the private investigator he had quietly hired, a faint smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. So subtle, it barely existed. Let her enjoy this illusion while she still could, he told himself. Let her cling to the fantasy that this was what she'd truly been craving. Sooner or later, she'd come to learn that freedom was never without a price. Evelyn's heartbeat quickened as she trailed behind Nicholas to his car, the rain painting the streets in blurred reflections that glistened like smeared art. The city shimmered with a vibrant energy that echoed her own internal chaos. This was the escape she had been longing for, a sharp detour from the monotony, a rush of unpredictability that felt like oxygen after suffocating routine. Nicola drove them to a modern glass-paneled hotel overlooking the waterfront, its facade a glinting promise of indulgence. Inside, light bounced off polished marble floors and ornate chandeliers, casting Evelyn in a glow that made her feel insignificant and strangely alive. The elevator doors sealed behind them, and her pulse spiked. This wasn't a flirtation with risk. It was a full-scale abandonment of everything familiar. By the time dawn broke, Evelyn was caught between exhilaration and disquiet. She left quietly, slipping out of the hotel while Nicholas slept, and drove through the hushed morning streets. Her thoughts churned, guilt and euphoria fighting for dominance. But as her car rolled into the driveway and her home's outline came into view, unease gripped her chest. Nothing inside had shifted. Everything remained in order, still, quiet, recognizable. Nolan was absent. A short note on the counter read, "Went for a run." His routines were the same, but the void he left behind seemed to echo louder than before. Evelyn tried to silence the creeping anxiety. They had made an agreement, hadn't they? She hadn't crossed any lines, or so she kept telling herself like a sacred refrain. But in the weeks that followed, maintaining her double life began to fracture her sense of balance. Nicholas took up more space in her mind, and soon she started inventing justifications to see him again. Amber, always the voice of encouragement, assured her that she was finally embracing the freedom she was meant to have. Nolan, meanwhile, remained unreadable. He worked long hours, wore the same composed expression, and made no attempts to interrogate her. He didn't push, didn't challenge, almost as if he had already come to terms with everything. Evelyn started to wonder if his detachment was masking something else. Had he found someone too? The notion stirred a confusing blend of emotions, envy, perhaps, or an unexpected sense of release. She couldn't quite decide which feeling disturbed her more. One evening, while texting Nicholas from across the room, she noticed Nolan seated nearby, a book resting in his hands. When she glanced up, his gaze was locked on her. His face gave away nothing, but his eyes pierced through her calm. "Everything okay?" he asked, voice even and unreadable. "Yeah," she said quickly, tucking her phone away. "Amber was just checking in." Nolan gave a silent nod. "All right," he replied, turning another page. The silence settled again, but Evelyn couldn't shake the suspicion that Nolan was far more aware than he let on, that something deeper was unfolding beneath the surface. What she didn't know was that he was already miles ahead of her. He had compiled it all, every text, every rendezvous, each exchanged glance. His private investigator had combed through every detail, and Nolan had assembled the evidence with methodical care. He wasn't after a confrontation. That would have been too simple, too kind. He wanted her to feel the full consequence of every decision, to live inside the collapse of the life she thought she could manipulate. He wanted her to sift through the debris and recognize the damage for what it was. And so, he waited. Quiet. Measured. Then came the reckoning. It happened on a rain-soaked Saturday night. Evelyn told Nolan she was spending the evening with Amber, but instead she headed downtown to a lavish, invite-only event Nicholas had mentioned, held in a private penthouse, draped in secrecy and luxury. The atmosphere oozed exclusivity. Crystal glasses clinked, refined laughter floated in the air, and the room vibrated with the detachment of those untouched by consequence. Nicholas met her with his usual effortless charm, his hand lingering just above the small of her back as he guided her through the crowd. "You're going to love this," he murmured close to her ear. Evelyn allowed herself to be swept up in the glamour, letting the buzz of the night blur her thoughts. But something deep inside refused to quiet down, a faint discomfort that wouldn't leave her alone. She wouldn't understand it until later. When she stepped into the house later that night, everything was cloaked in stillness. Then she noticed something sitting on the coffee table, an envelope bearing her name, written in Nolan's unmistakable handwriting. Her hands began to shake as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a collection of photographs. The document listed times, dates, and locations, each correlating with an image. Her and Nicholas. The hotel suite. Fleeting looks. Captured texts. It was all there. At the bottom, in Nolan's composed script, one line stood out. "Freedom has a cost, Evelyn." Her legs buckled, and she collapsed onto the sofa, clutching the photographs, her heartbeat crashing in her ears. She flipped through them, each one a razor. Nicholas's face, her smile, the hotel bar, every moment captured, every detail known. Nolan had seen it all. The realization struck with brutal clarity. He hadn't been oblivious. He had been documenting, planning, preparing. The structure of his records, the cool clarity of the list. It all reflected the man she had so easily underestimated. It finally hit her. Nolan had never been unaware. He had never been passive. He had simply been waiting. He moved with deliberate intent, every motion part of a calculated sequence. The sudden vibration of her phone pulled Evelyn from her haze. A message from Nolan flashed on the screen. "Don't wait up. I'll be working late at the office." Her grip on the phone tightened as the weight of the message settled in. She had believed she was in control, convinced that their redefined dynamic played in her favor. But the realization hit hard, like a punch to the chest. The photos scattered across her lap no longer looked like mere secrets. They were loaded with implications. In a panic, she dialed Nolan's number, straight to voicemail. "Nolan, please. Pick up," she whispered, barely able to keep her voice steady. "We have to talk. I never meant for it to get to this point." The hours dragged, each tick of the clock echoing her unraveling. She drifted from room to room, restless and lost in her own spiral. By dawn, she was completely spent, emotionally frayed and physically drained, with no clearer path forward than the night before. When Monday arrived, the dread trailed her into the office. Nolan's conspicuous absence didn't go unnoticed, and the prolonged glances and hushed conversations from co-workers made her skin crawl. She threw herself into work, trying to focus, but her mind returned again and again to the damning images and to the cold finality of Nolan's message. Her breath hitched when she saw a new message appear in her inbox. The subject line read plainly, "Urgent. Meeting request." A sense of dread rooted itself in her stomach. She stepped into the conference room to find her supervisor and someone from HR already seated. Their expressions were unreadable. "Evelyn, have a seat," her supervisor said, gesturing to the chair across from them. She sat rigidly, hands clasped tightly to disguise the trembling. "We've received some troubling material suggesting inappropriate conduct with a coworker," the HR representative began, her voice detached and clinical. "You're aware that we maintain strict policies around professional behavior." Evelyn felt the color drain from her face. I don't know what this is about," she murmured. Her supervisor slid a folder toward her. Inside were printed versions of the photographs she thought were hidden, alongside messages exchanged with Nicholas. These were submitted anonymously, her supervisor stated without emotion. HR picked up from there. "In addition, several team members have come forward expressing concerns about your recent conduct in the workplace." Evelyn's thoughts scattered like broken glass. There was no doubt, Nolan had been behind this. He had released everything with precise timing, fully aware of the consequences. "We're initiating an internal review," HR concluded. "Effective immediately, you're on administrative leave." The words landed with crushing weight. Her career, one of the last stable things in her world, was now slipping from her grasp. That evening, numb and disoriented, she drove home. As she pulled into the driveway, her eyes locked onto Nolan's car. A surge of hope flared, tempered with dread. "Nolan?" she called, her voice tentative in the silent house. She found him in the kitchen, calmly preparing dinner. He looked up, his face unreadable. "We have to talk," she said, her voice breaking. "I agree," he replied, setting his knife aside and wiping his hands on a towel. "Please, just—" she started, but he lifted a hand to stop her. "I warned you," he said evenly, his voice low but firm. "You didn't really think this would come without a price, did you? That I wouldn't see through it?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know how to ask for what I needed." His voice dropped, ice behind the words. "What you needed? Did you ever once stop to consider what I needed? What trust meant? What loyalty meant?" He stepped in closer, fury simmering beneath his measured tone. "Did those things even matter while you were sneaking around with Nicholas?" Evelyn collapsed inward, her defenses crumbling. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I know I messed up. Just tell me what I can do to make it right." His expression didn't change. "You made your decision," he said flatly. "Now it's my turn." He slid a sealed envelope across the counter. Inside were divorce papers. She looked down, tears blurring the text. "Nolan, don't. Please don't do this." "It's already done," he said as he stood. "My attorney will contact you." Then he left the room, his exit as silent as his destruction. But that was only the beginning. Over the following weeks, her world continued to unravel. Their social circle buzzed with rumors, carefully released bits of truth timed to cause the most damage. Amber's husband received similar evidence and, in a fit of outrage, filed for divorce, placing the blame squarely on Evelyn's shoulders. Nicholas, too, faced the fallout. The same evidence reached his employer, resulting in the loss of his job and his once polished image. By the time the divorce was finalized, Evelyn had lost everything: her career, her marriage, her friends. Nolan had dismantled her life with exacting precision, methodically stripping away each layer. And never once did he raise his voice. He remained composed, a man deeply wronged, but never undone. The people around him rallied in support, praising his restraint, admiring the quiet dignity with which he carried himself. He became a quiet hero in their eyes, proof that strength doesn't have to shout. Evelyn, meanwhile, was left to wander the wreckage. Days blurred into weeks, then months. Alone, and with no income, she was forced to give up the house and move into a cramped apartment far from the life she once called hers. Calls to old friends went unanswered. She had become someone they no longer wished to know. And so she remained, an emblem of betrayal and of the man who never yelled, never fought in the open, but still brought her world crashing down with devastating grace. Amber, bitter and defeated by her own downfall, cut all ties with Evelyn, placing full responsibility for her ruined life squarely on her shoulders. But nothing stung more than the night Evelyn discovered the depths of Nolan's calculated revenge. While sorting through a pile of neglected mail in her small, dimly lit apartment, she came across an envelope from the bank. As her eyes scanned the letter, her hands began to shake. Nolan had emptied their joint accounts and funneled every dollar into a personal account under his name. The funds had vanished, and since their divorce had already been finalized, Evelyn had no legal recourse. The modest amount she received in the settlement was rapidly disappearing, leaving her financially stranded. In a panic, she called Nolan, for the first time in months. To her surprise, he answered. "Nolan, please," she stammered, her voice unsteady. "I know I hurt you, but you've taken everything. I don't have anything left." He paused before responding, his tone cool and precise. "You made your choices, Evelyn. I simply ensured they caught up with you." Her breath hitched. "How can you be so cold?" she asked. "We shared a life. Doesn't that still mean something?" "It did," he replied, voice firm. "Right up until you decided it didn't. Goodbye, Evelyn." The call ended, and she stared blankly at her phone as tears slid down her cheeks. As the months dragged on, Evelyn found herself haunted by echoes of the life she once had. She replayed old memories over and over, trying to pinpoint where everything began to unravel. In her pursuit of freedom and thrill, she had lost everything. Even Nicholas had disappeared, leaving town in the wake of the scandal that destroyed his reputation and career. For a time, she contemplated reaching out to him, but the idea only reignited old pain tied to the betrayal that started it all. Sleep became elusive. Her dreams merged with flashbacks, Nolan's calm, unreadable smile lingering like a ghost in the night. One quiet afternoon, while wandering through a nearby park, Evelyn spotted a familiar figure standing beneath a tree. It was Nolan, arms crossed, engaged in conversation with a woman. Her stomach dropped. The woman exuded elegance and confidence, her expressions animated and full of life. Nolan smiled at her in a way Evelyn hadn't seen in years, genuine, relaxed, deeply warm. Regret stabbed through her chest. Unable to suppress the urge, Evelyn began walking toward them, each step hesitant. "Nolan," she said gently. He turned, his expression unreadable for a beat, before settling into a calm, distant smile. "Evelyn." The woman, sensing the shift in atmosphere, offered a polite nod and stepped away. "I'll give you two a moment," she said kindly. Evelyn stood before him, uncertain of what to say. He seemed different, centered, composed, completely detached from the past. "I didn't think I'd see you here," she murmured. "Life's full of surprises," he said with quiet ease. She searched his face, looking for traces of the man she once knew. I needed to tell you I'm sorry. For everything. I made a mess of it all, and I've paid the price. But I never stopped caring." Nolan held her gaze for a long moment, unreadable. "I've moved on, Evelyn," he said simply. "You should too." Her chest ached, but she gave a small, resigned nod, tears brimming in her eyes. "I hope you found happiness," she whispered. A soft, almost bittersweet smile touched his lips. "I have." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving her alone beneath a dull sky, the gravity of her mistakes heavier than ever. From that moment on, Evelyn began to acknowledge the full weight of her new existence. The road ahead was uncertain and harsh, but she resolved to begin the slow work of rebuilding. Meanwhile, Nolan's meticulously orchestrated revenge had brought him the closure he sought. The wounds left by betrayal had begun to heal, and he found peace in knowing he had reclaimed control over his life. The future looked promising, finally free of the shadows that once loomed so large. Evelyn's downfall stood as a sobering reminder. Pursuing freedom recklessly can sometimes exact a devastating price. Even as time ticked forward, her pain remained raw. Each day became a struggle to keep moving, to find meaning in the remnants of what used to be. The glamorous world she once longed for now felt like a distant dream. She scraped by on part-time jobs, her professional aspirations destroyed by the scandal Nolan had unearthed. The stigma followed her everywhere, a constant whisper of disgrace that clung to her identity. One night, while cleaning tables at the small diner where she now worked, she overheard a conversation at a nearby booth. "Did you hear Nolan Monroe's getting married?" one customer asked. Evelyn froze, her hand tightening around the damp rag. "Yeah," the other replied. "To some high-powered attorney. They're amazing together. After what his ex-wife put him through, he finally caught a break." The words hit like punches. Nolan wasn't just recovering. He was thriving, rebuilding the life she had thrown away. Needing to confront her guilt once and for all, Evelyn decided to reach out one final time. She didn't expect a response. Maybe she didn't even hope for one. She just wanted to speak her truth aloud. She sat at her small kitchen table, picked up a pen, and poured everything onto paper. Her confessions, her remorse, her final goodbye. One last attempt to make peace with the wreckage. She owned up to everything, her choices, her failures, and expressed sincere remorse, wishing him happiness as he stepped into the next phase of his life. But the act of sealing the envelope brought with it a weight she couldn't shake, a quiet finality, as if this gesture would be her last chance to make amends. As she slipped the letter into the mailbox, she couldn't tell if Nolan would even open it, let alone care what it said. At that very moment, Nolan was quietly preparing to move forward, with resolve that no longer wavered. His engagement to Clara marked the beginning of something new. She was the sharp, kind-hearted lawyer who had stood by him during the emotional storm of his divorce. Clara had been his anchor, a calm presence in chaos, offering both intellect and genuine compassion. Her steadiness had helped him rebuild when everything felt like it was falling apart. And now, for the first time in ages, Nolan was ready to look forward without flinching. When he eventually found Evelyn's letter waiting in his mailbox, he paused, envelope in hand. A part of him hesitated. He wasn't sure he wanted to revisit the wounds she'd left behind, but curiosity overpowered caution, and he opened it. As he read her words, a swirl of feelings hit him: sorrow, resentment, and surprisingly, a flicker of understanding. Her words felt honest, her regret unmistakable, but they couldn't undo what had been done. Quietly, he folded the letter and placed it to the side, making a deliberate choice not to respond. There was nothing left to discuss. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn began finding her footing in a life that felt unfamiliar. She leaned into the smallest sources of comfort, an encouraging word from someone at work, a quiet evening lost in a novel, the satisfaction of managing her finances without help. It wasn't the life she'd once envisioned, but it was hers now, and she was learning how to find a fragile sort of peace in that reality. One sunny afternoon, while walking through a nearby park, she caught sight of a couple laughing together beneath a large leafy tree. The sight struck a chord deep inside her, a gentle ache, a mix of longing and fragile hope. It reminded her that happiness hadn't disappeared from the world, even if it no longer lived beside her. She didn't know what the future held, but she made herself a quiet vow to keep walking forward, no matter how hazy or uneven the road. Elsewhere, Nolan's wedding day arrived with calm simplicity. The ceremony was modest, intimate, shared with only those dearest to him. As he stood beside Clara, gazing into the eyes of the woman who had helped him rebuild his life, something deep within him finally settled. After all the pain, all the loss, standing there in that moment, Nolan felt a quiet, unshakable peace. He had made it through the storm, and beside Clara, he finally felt whole once more. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. They said it was his fault, that everything started with him and should end with him. But when the past crashes back in, wearing the faces that once meant family, the rules stop applying. Lies become truth, and truth becomes a weapon. His silence was taken for weakness, his refusal for confession. But there's a line a person crosses when they stop explaining themselves. And that's when something begins, something none of them were ready for. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. I'm Thomas, 31 years old. The moment I walked in and saw my wife tangled up with my little brother was the moment I realized, no matter how far you try to outrun your roots, the past has a nasty way of catching up and sinking its claws in deep. I'm not here to claim innocence either. I've made my share of reckless decisions. I've let anger steer the ship more times than I care to admit. If folks see me as the villain in this mess, I won't argue, because they're not wrong. I was raised in a quiet Midwestern suburb, the firstborn of 2 boys. My parents always insisted they treated us equally, but anyone looking in from the outside would have pointed straight at Peter. He was the golden boy from day one. He got the attention, the seconds at dinner, the latest toys. Me? I was told to set the example. Peter's the younger one, Thomas. He needs more from us. Maybe it doesn't sound like much, but that kind of imbalance adds up. A slow, steady drip of resentment filling a container you didn't know you had. By the time I hit high school, it was overflowing. Peter got cheered for acing a pop quiz. I landed serious achievements, and all I got was a nod and a reminder not to make Peter feel small. When I got accepted into college, they asked me to keep it low-key so Peter wouldn't feel left out. A week later, they threw a full-blown party when he won some small-time math award. That was the day I mentally checked out. At 18, I packed my bags, signed my name on some student loan forms, and walked away from that house for good. We didn't speak for years. I scraped my way through college, living off part-time jobs and sharing a crummy apartment with a friend. Peter stayed home, living easy without ever having to think about money. By my mid-20s, life had finally started to make sense. I had a steady job in tech, climbing the ladder at a data analytics firm. That's when I met Amelia. She was 25, tall, with this magnetic energy like she owned every room she walked into. She had a razor-sharp wit, eyes that didn't flinch, and she made it clear she wasn't interested in anything average. I was stupid enough to feel special for catching her eye. We dove into things fast. Within a year, we were practically inseparable. I handled most of the bills while she bounced between marketing gigs, until she decided she was done working altogether. Said I made enough for both of us. I convinced myself it was love, that she'd eventually figure out her path. We got married in a blur, and I settled into the role of provider without much resistance. Maybe I thought that was just how love looked. I'd always carried extra weight. It felt familiar. Then Peter popped back into my life. He reached out online, said our parents missed me and wanted to patch things up. Maybe I was just lonely for family, or maybe I let my defenses slip. I agreed, thought maybe time had changed things. Maybe we could start over. At first, it was awkward, but tolerable. I introduced Amelia to them, and surprisingly, things went well. My dad even said, "Look at us, like a real family again." My mom treated Amelia like a long-lost daughter, complimenting her style and chatting like they'd known each other for years. Then Peter started coming around more, watching games, hanging out. I tried to let the past go, but something was off. He began showing up without warning, always around when I wasn't. I'd find him in the kitchen with Amelia, or just lounging around the place midday like he lived there. It didn't sit right with me. Then Amelia told me she was pregnant. I won't pretend I didn't feel something break open inside me. I never imagined fatherhood, but hearing her say it made my chest lift in a way I hadn't felt before. I was walking on air, for a little while anyway. Then the oddities ramped up. Peter started acting weird. He'd put his hand on her belly like he had some claim, crack a joke, best uncle ever reporting for duty, then shoot her this look that made my stomach churn. I'd come home and find them whispering, laughing like I'd just interrupted a private show. When I asked about it, Amelia rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic. I tried to believe her. I really did. I told myself I was just overthinking. But then I found something under our bed, a pair of flashy men's boxers. Not mine. No way. They were designer, loud, and reeked of someone trying too hard. I just stood there, staring at them, my brain stuck in neutral. No one else should have had reason to be in that room. Amelia sure as hell didn't wear anything like that. My heart was jackhammering in my chest, but I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed certainty. That's how I operate, evidence before emotion. So, I waited until she was asleep and went through her phone. I'm not proud of it, but suspicion will drive you to places you never thought you'd go. I scrolled through her texts with trembling fingers, and there it was, months of flirtation between her and Peter. Photos, pet names, plans to tell me the truth after the baby was born, all while milking my support in the meantime. They laughed about how blind I was, about how easy it had been. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I didn't sleep a second that night. Morning came, and I went straight to her. No gentle build-up, no chance for her to spin anything. I looked her in the eye and said, "You've been sleeping with my brother? In my bed?" She tried to dodge it at first, deny, redirect. But with the messages in my hand, the act didn't last. And then, as if it were my fault, she fired back, "You're always gone." I was lonely. Peter always seemed to appear whenever I needed someone. I'd gotten used to chasing validation, hungry for some form of acknowledgement. But everything shifted the day I mentioned the underwear. Her reaction was instant and venomous. Her face curled in disgust. "Seriously? You're overreacting," she snapped. "You never gave me what I needed anyway." A scorching rage exploded inside me. Scenes of the two of them together, her moaning his name in the same sheets we once slept in, flashed like lightning in my mind. My jaw locked so hard it hurt, and I bit back the impulse to scream something I couldn't take back. Instead, the next morning, I filed the divorce papers. The betrayal cracked something deep inside me. I couldn't focus, couldn't eat. My thoughts were a whirlwind, and worst of all, my own family had taken Peter's side. "Thomas, you have to be fair," my parents pleaded. "She's pregnant. She needs safety, support." I shot back that the baby wasn't mine. They dismissed it like it didn't matter. "She's still your wife," they said. "You have a duty," my mother pressed. "You can't abandon a pregnant woman." Then came the real gut punch. "This all happened because you failed her." The disgust in my chest twisted like a knot. The same old family story, I'm the problem. Suddenly, I was the bad guy. Peter was the victim. I told them all to go to hell, but that was only the beginning. In court, Amelia's attorney tore into me while my parents and Peter looked on approvingly. I was accused of manipulating her, of isolating her from her career, of being volatile and vengeful, all of it fabricated. My own mother took the stand and recited tales from my childhood, how I had issues with anger, especially around women. I watched the judge's expression sink further with each word she spoke. I was too shocked to defend myself. The ruling hit like a sledgehammer. Amelia walked away with a good portion of my savings and took the car. The house stayed in my name, but it felt poisoned. The following months were a haze of regret and resentment. I drank most nights to find sleep, went to work barely functioning, and snapped at anyone who asked how I was holding up. But I clung to my job like a lifeline, determined not to let anyone see me fall apart. Eventually, that stubbornness paid off. Management took notice, and I earned a promotion, higher title, better salary, even a company car. For the first time in ages, something felt right. Feeling a flicker of pride, I posted a quick update online about the new role. Huge mistake. Days later, my phone started buzzing. Mom wanted to catch up. I didn't respond. She doubled down, stormed into my office, cornered the front desk, causing a scene until I agreed to come over. They'd moved into a larger home, courtesy of the divorce settlement, more space for Peter, Amelia, and the baby. Yes, the baby. A daughter, born just 3 weeks prior. When I arrived, Peter wasn't there, and Amelia was asleep in a separate room. My parents led me into the living room, and I braced myself for the guilt trip I knew was coming. I didn't have to wait long. Dad cleared his throat. Peter got laid off. We're having trouble with the bills, especially the baby's medical costs. I froze. Medical costs? Mom filled in the blanks. The child had a serious health issue, one that required expensive treatment. She broke down crying, talking about how innocent the baby was, like I was personally sentencing her to pain. Some part of me stirred, pity maybe, but she wasn't my child. She was the outcome of betrayal, of lies. Still, my parents kept pressing. "You're doing well now," Dad said. "You could help. It would be the decent thing." When I said the situation wasn't mine to fix, Mom snapped. "She was your wife, Thomas. You didn't keep her in check. Now look at the consequences. You think you can just walk away?" My mind reeled. Keep her in check? "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Dad jumped in. "Call it what you want, but if you'd acted like a real husband, she wouldn't have strayed. You neglected her. This is on you." I felt my blood pressure spike, but I kept it together. Then came the final blow. "You never stepped up as an older brother," Dad said. "You always pushed Peter aside. You never guided him. If you'd been there for him, none of this would have happened." That was the tipping point. Something inside me snapped. I stood there shaking with fury. "You're actually blaming me for Peter's entire life falling apart?" They didn't even hesitate, just nodded. That was all I needed. I turned and walked out. As I opened the door, Peter was arriving. Our eyes met. He stepped forward, smiling like we were still kids. "Hey man, you got a minute?" I brushed past him without a word. He reached out and grabbed my arm. "Come on, can't we just talk?" The fake warmth in his voice made my skin crawl. My father came sprinting toward me, desperation sharp in his voice as he begged me to stop and hear him out. I yanked my arm free from his grasp and barked, "I don't want anything to do with either of you." Without a second glance, I charged down the path, rain slicing through the air in sharp bursts. Peter intercepted me at the driveway, stepping into my path with that smug, holier-than-thou smirk, like he thought playing the martyr made him noble. "Look, man," he said in that infuriatingly even tone, "I get why you're angry, but Amelia needed someone. You weren't there. I just stepped in. That's not on me." That self-serving excuse was the last straw. Rage surged, tunneling my vision. "Shut the hell up!" I roared, lunging at him. My fist slammed into his chest, and I seized his shirt with both hands. Somewhere behind us, I heard Mom cry out, panic in her voice. But I was too far gone, consumed by fury. Peter struggled weakly, trying to push me off. I shoved him backward, forcing him over the curb. Then I saw his car, crooked behind mine, and something inside me snapped. Fueled by rage, I stormed toward it, flung the door open, and slammed my foot on the gas, twisting the wheel until the side of the car screeched hard against the hedge. It wasn't a full-on crash, but the metal grated horribly against the branches, leaving a deep, ragged scar. "You've lost your damn mind," Peter shouted behind me. I spun around like a thunderclap. Without thinking, I slapped him, hard. Pain zinged up my arm as he staggered back, stunned. Mom screamed something I couldn't make out. Dad's voice cracked through the storm. "Thomas, that's enough." But I wasn't done. I grabbed Peter by the collar again, eyes inches from his, and snarled, "You had the nerve to screw my wife under my own roof, you disgusting bastard. Come near me again and I swear I'll bury you." He looked trapped, breath catching in his throat. Still, he couldn't keep his mouth shut. "She needed someone. You weren't around. What did you think was going to happen?" he muttered. That only threw gasoline on the fire. I punched him again, harder this time, completely indifferent to the growing audience of neighbors now watching from porches and windows. Dad rushed in, wedging himself between us. "That's enough," he bellowed, shoving me back. I stood there, chest heaving, fists clenched, hatred burning in my eyes. Peter was holding his face, glaring back at me like he wanted to strike, but didn't. Instead, he spat at me, "You're insane," and limped toward his banged-up car. I turned to face my parents, both looking at me like I'd become a stranger. Before Dad could open his mouth, I snapped, "Don't you dare blame this on me. He made the choice. He's the one who slept with my wife." Dad's jaw twitched. "We still need money for the baby's treatment. Do you want your niece to die?" he snapped. That word, niece, hit me like a sucker punch. She wasn't mine, not by blood. Still, my gut twisted. I turned to leave, but Dad grabbed my shoulder. "Don't walk away from this," he said, voice sharp. "You're the oldest. You don't just get to blow up and disappear. You will make this right." His hand tightened. Instinct took over. I spun around, shoved his arm away, and growled, "Make it right? After what you pulled in court? After everything you said to protect him? You're lucky I haven't knocked you out." He leaned in close, jabbing his finger into my chest. "Careful, I'm still your father." I let out a bitter laugh. "You stopped being my father the day I turned 18 and walked out that door." His face hardened. "We didn't abandon you, Thomas. You left. You walked away from your brother. And now you come back, wreck his car, attack him, and refuse to help a sick kid?" His words hit a nerve, deep and raw. I reeled back and slapped him, so hard my hand went numb. He stumbled, cursing under his breath as he clutched his cheek. Mom let out a horrified scream. "Oh my God, what's wrong with you?" Dad stared at me, his eyes ablaze. Then he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the cops," he said through clenched teeth. I froze. My heart thundered in my ears. For a split second, I considered tearing the phone from his hand and smashing it. Instead, I just stepped back, breath uneven. Let him call. Maybe I deserved it. I'd assaulted my brother, struck my father. But in that moment, I felt nothing but fire. Across the way, Peter was rummaging through the mess in his car, his face twisted in a storm of rage and fear. Dad spoke into the phone, his voice trembling with fury. "My son attacked me, and his brother," he told the operator. "We need someone here, now." He told them where I was. My mother's gaze pierced through me, her face streaked with tears as she cried out like I was lost beyond saving. I stumbled back, hands shaking so violently I had to pin them to my sides just to keep them steady. Everything had unraveled far beyond control. Then came the faint wail of sirens cutting through the damp air. There was no hiding from the neighbors. Some peeked out through curtains. Others stepped outside, drawn by the chaos. I didn't flinch. I stood still, letting the drizzle soak my hair and creep down my collar. My father paced near the front steps, grimacing as he examined the swelling on his face in the reflection of the glass door. Peter stood nearby, holding an ice pack against his jaw, eyes flicking between the street and me. A police cruiser pulled up. 2 officers climbed out. One, older and stone-faced, scanned the crowd with a hardened gaze. The younger one, more cautious, looked around before asking, "Who called this in?" My father raised a trembling hand and pointed straight at me. "He hit both of us, me and my younger son," he said, voice wavering between anger and theatrics. "And he smashed up Peter's car. We want him taken in." The senior officer's eyes narrowed as he turned his attention to me. "Is that true, sir?" I drew in a breath, steadying myself. My chest thudded like a drum. "Yeah," I said, barely audible. "I did. But they pushed me." The younger cop shifted slightly, stepping in between me and my father. "Let's not make this worse than it already is," he said, calm but firm. "Anyone need medical assistance?" he asked. Peter was the first to respond. "I'll manage," he muttered, holding the ice to his face. My dad, still winded, shook his head. "No, I'm okay." Then my mother exploded. "He can't get away with this," she screamed, her voice raw and cracking. "Just look at Peter's car. Look at what he's done. He's not safe." The older cop sighed, clearly trying to stay patient. "Ma'am, if you want to press charges, we'll need to process this as assault and property damage. Are you sure that's what you want?" My father hesitated, unsure. Peter didn't blink. "Yes, lock him up," Peter snapped. I didn't fight back. A part of me believed it was deserved. Maybe this was the consequence I'd earned. Still, beneath that resignation, something bitter began to bubble inside me. The younger officer turned toward me. "Do you want to say anything?" I must have paused too long, because my dad jumped in. "He doesn't have an excuse," he snapped. "He's always had a violent streak." I cleared my throat. "My father and brother have been tormenting me for months," I said calmly. "They keep demanding money for a child that's not mine." I snapped. I'm not proud of it, but I did. I went on. "They lied during the divorce, cost me more than you can imagine. Today they cornered me, blamed me for everything. Peter losing his job, the kids' medical bills, then demanded I pay. I lost it." The officers exchanged a glance. Then the older one spoke. "We can handle this one of 2 ways, mediation or formal charges. What's your decision?" My father's face turned crimson. Peter looked ready to gloat, but I caught a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Maybe the idea of court wasn't as appealing now. But my mother didn't hesitate. Her voice was cold and cutting. "He's dangerous," she said. "Take him away." The officer gave a small nod. "All right." The handcuffs clicked shut around my wrists. The steel dug into my skin. I looked over at Peter and my dad. "Feel better now?" I muttered. Peter turned his gaze away. My father didn't respond. My mother stood motionless, silent except for the tears running down her cheeks. Her expression was unreadable, her lips drawn tight. The officers guided me toward the cruiser. My mind was racing. I didn't feel remorse, at least not in the way they wanted me to. What I felt was a deep, hollow ache. I had finally cracked, and I'd cracked hard. Whatever threadbare ties remained between me and my family had snapped completely. I spent the next few hours behind bars, charged with misdemeanor assault and destruction of property. My lawyer, who had already navigated the wreckage of my divorce, came through and posted my bail. She assured me that jail time was unlikely, since there were no major injuries and I had no prior record. Still, she warned that it could get ugly if my father and brother pushed their version of events too hard. And push they did. My father's written statement painted me as a lifetime threat. Violent, unpredictable, emotionally unstable. Peter provided photos of the wrecked car and bruises on his face. My mother gave an impassioned plea, saying she feared for her safety that day. I tried to explain to the judge what had been done to me, how they had manipulated, lied, gaslit. But the fact remained. I had struck them. The judge gave me a stern warning and ordered anger management classes. I walked out with probation and a crushing financial hit, fines, Peter's car repairs, and part of his medical bills. He claimed he had whiplash and a sprained wrist. In court, I faced them, my father and brother. Their smug grins said it all. It was humiliating. Still, I accepted the judgment without a fight. When I finally got back home, the rage that had fueled me through the ordeal started to fade. But relief didn't take its place. Instead, a heavy numbness settled in, cold, dull, and suffocating. A void I couldn't fill. I'd lost control, and in that single moment, I gave them exactly what they needed. Evidence. Just what they'd been waiting for to paint me as the violent, unstable aggressor in their version of the story. But their satisfaction didn't mean they'd let up, not even slightly. 1 week after the court date, my phone lit up with a blocked number. Without thinking, I answered. My mother's voice burst through the line, frantic and trembling. She was crying, barely getting the words out. The baby's condition had worsened. She needed immediate, specialized medical care. If I had even a sliver of decency left, I'd help cover the expenses. My instinct was to hang up right there, but something, maybe guilt, stopped me. I asked the question that should have come first. Where's Peter? Isn't this his responsibility? Her sobs only deepened. He lost his job, you know that, she said, breath hitching. We can't afford this. There are doctor visits, prescriptions, maybe even surgery. Her desperation filled every pause. She pressed on. Thomas, listen to me. That little girl didn't ask for any of this. You're the one who brought your brother into your wife's life. If you'd kept them apart, we wouldn't be in this situation. That baby wouldn't be suffering now. The sheer absurdity of her logic almost made me laugh. So this was my fault now? Because she raised Peter to be a weak, self-centered mess who couldn't hold down a job and slept with my wife? I let out a sharp breath. Oh, so now I'm responsible for that? Because your golden boy can't keep it together? She gasped, like I'd struck her. Watch it. That's my son you're talking about. I rubbed at my temples, desperate to shut her out. I've had enough. Don't ever call me again. I ended the call. But that wasn't the end of it. Just a few days later, they were at my front door. Both of them. I couldn't believe the nerve, especially with the restraining order still in place from the assault situation. Sure, I was the one supposed to stay away, but here they were, ignoring boundaries like always. My father was banging on the door, barking that I didn't have the right to avoid them. When I finally cracked it open, his eyes flickered with hesitation, probably bracing for another outburst. Still, he straightened, voice hard. This is your last chance to do the right thing for your family. My mother stood behind him, looking worn down and barely holding it together. Her voice trembled as she begged, Please, Thomas. The baby's in constant pain. We're on the brink of losing the house. You're our only hope. My father, jaw clenched, added in a low growl, You owe us. I stared at him, fury simmering under my skin. I owe you? For what? For dragging me through hell in that courtroom? For lying under oath? For watching while Peter destroyed my marriage and you emptied my bank account? You had me thrown in jail. And now you show up asking for money? My mother stepped forward again, tears welling. She's your niece, Thomas. Don't make her suffer because you despise the rest of us. Something snagged inside me. Technically, she was my niece, my brother's child. We shared blood, no matter how twisted the circumstances. Still, she was the living reminder of betrayal, of everything I'd lost. But the thought of her hurting, it gnawed at me. My father saw the crack in my resolve and went in for the kill. You can stop this from turning into a tragedy. Help her, and she has a shot. If you don't, whatever happens is on your conscience. That last line hit like a punch. I looked at them, torn between boiling rage and something far darker. Guilt. A part of me whispered, she's just a baby. None of this is her fault. But another voice screamed back, why am I the one stuck cleaning up their mess? I stiffened. I'm not giving you anything. Tell Peter to grow up and get a job. Tell Amelia to pull her weight for once. My father's expression turned cold. There's no time left. She needs surgery now. My mother broke down completely, burying her face in her hands. But I felt empty. My voice came out flat. You made this mess. You can live with the consequences. And I shut the door in their faces. They didn't leave right away. They kept yelling, pounding the door. My dad even threatened to call the police again. But for what? For refusing to give them money? Eventually, they left. I half expected Amelia to show up next, maybe try wringing more support out of me through the legal system. Instead, she reached out through my lawyer. Wanted to meet in person, just the two of us. Said it was about a private agreement. My attorney strongly advised against it, but curiosity won out. I agreed. She arrived at the diner looking worn down, eyes heavy with exhaustion. The moment she sat across from me, her fury spilled over. Leaning close, she hissed, "Think you're off the hook? I'll find a judge who'll raise your payments. I've got plenty to say about your temper, the assault, all of it. I can drag you through court again and make you bleed." I kept my fists clenched beneath the table, forcing myself to stay calm. "We're divorced. I've paid what was ordered. I'm done." Her lips curled in a smug smile. "You always underestimate how easy it is for me to get the court on my side. You attacked your brother. You lashed out at your father. It's all documented. I can twist it any way I want, so don't test me." I stared at her, the bitterness rising like bile. "So this is it? You're trying to blackmail me into paying for that child's medical bills?" She shrugged like it was nothing, her eyes cold and empty. "The kid's sick. Treatment costs money. Peter can't do this alone. Mom and Dad are barely holding it together. You're the only one with the resources to help. So yes, this is exactly what I'm demanding. Step in on your own terms, or I'll drag you back into the courtroom." Anger surged through me, but I bit it down. Peter's the father. This is his responsibility. She gave a smug little smile, idly swirling her glass of water. "Still clinging to that moral high ground, Thomas?" She leaned forward, her tone slicing. "Letting an infant suffer because you're too angry to help. Real classy." Then, softer, like a razor wrapped in silk. "If she dies, that's on your conscience." My fists curled under the table. I knew if I stayed, I'd explode. I shoved my chair back and got up, turning away without a word. Her voice followed me, loud and venomous. "Walk away and you'll regret it." The whole diner went silent, everyone staring. I didn't stop. I picked up my pace. Over the next few days, I cut all contact, muted my phone, blocked numbers, shut them all out. The messages kept coming. Accusations, emotional blackmail, desperate pleas from people I hadn't spoken to in years. But I was done. Sure, there were moments I'd think about the baby and feel a sting of guilt. But I reminded myself, she's not my child. None of this is mine to fix. Peter and Amelia made their choices. If they wanted to play house, they could also deal with the wreckage. I heard Peter was trying to get work, but nothing stuck. Then, one day, I made the mistake of opening an email from Mom. She said they'd sold family heirlooms, begged from cousins, and scheduled the surgery. Her last line hit hard. "If anything happens, you're the reason." I reread that sentence again and again, like it was carving itself into me. Some nights I couldn't sleep. I'd stand in the shower, fists clenched, furious with nowhere to aim it. My mind replayed everything. Punching Peter in public, Dad's disgusted look, Mom's sobs. I wasn't blameless. Maybe I was the bad guy, at least for how I handled it, but I couldn't let them pull me back into the mess. I struggled with it until the guilt dulled to numbness. Then came another twist. A month later, someone knocked on my door. I checked. No one there. But on the porch sat a basket. My chest tightened. I brought it inside. Inside, a stack of hospital invoices, a printed list of medical expenses, and a photo of the baby. Tiny, pale, hooked up to machines. At the bottom of the page, scrawled in red ink, "Are you proud of yourself? She might not make it." I closed my eyes. Guilt coiled in my chest like a tightening rope. This was their last desperate move. I flipped through the paperwork. The numbers were staggering. After a long moment, I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. I asked, just to be sure, if I had any legal responsibility. She confirmed what I already knew. No birth certificate, no DNA, no obligation. If they tried anything in court, it wouldn't stand. I ended the call and looked at the photo again. The baby looked so small, so defenseless. Eyes closed, tubes everywhere. She never asked for any of this. I noticed my hands were shaking. Then slowly, I tossed it all, the papers, the photo, into the trash. I wouldn't let them twist my emotions again. If that made me the villain in their story, I could live with it. Another update came eventually. But this story doesn't tie up with a neat bow. I stayed in the area, kept my job. My dad warned he'd call the police if I stepped near their house, so I stayed away. Mom tried reaching out once more. I blocked everything. Peter and Amelia probably spit my name whenever it comes up. Whether the baby lived or not, I can't say for sure. A cousin mentioned the surgery went through and the child pulled through. I didn't follow up. A part of me hopes she's okay, that she won't carry the weight of her parents' choices. As for me, I moved forward. I got slapped with probation, a fine that stung but didn't break me, and the truth that I'd severed ties with everyone in my family. Therapy, mandated by the court, became part of my weekly routine after the assault charge. 1 year went by. I finished probation, paid what I owed. The day it all officially ended, my father left one last voicemail. "You can't escape what you did to this family. This isn't over." I listened to it once, then deleted it. They haven't contacted me since. Maybe someday they'll try again, probably if they need cash. But now I know how to close that door. I still live in the same house, but I made it my own. Renovated everything, scrubbed Amelia out of every room, bought a new bed, painted over the past, got rid of anything that reminded me of her, or of my brother. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.